Alrighty, good morning, everyone. It's 8:30. I will call to the meeting to order. It's October 12th. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions to that agenda? Councillor Christie.
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We pre-circulated the minutes of the September 28th meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor King.
I'd make the motion to accept the minutes from the September 28th regular meeting as presented.
Alrighty, we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Our first agenda item is 4.1, Nihil County Recycling. Welcome, Mr. McKiernan. And anytime you're ready.
Good morning, Reeve, members of council. This morning I bring forth a RFD 4.1 Nihil County Recycling. With the upcoming closing of the Three Hills Recycling Depot, Nihil County has received an increase in inquiries regarding the options available to residents to recycle within the county. Through its membership with the Drumheller District Solid Waste Management Association, Nihil County offers the residents several recycling options at our various sites. Information on these services can always be found on the website, as well information on our services is presented in our ratepayer newsletters through communications. So Nihil County is a member of the Drumheller District Solid Waste Management Association, which provides recycling opportunities within that membership. Recycling options available are electronics recycling, paint recycling, cardboard, and newsprint recycling. Through the association, pickup and transportation of this material is arranged and completed. Nihil County is also a collection site for used twine, and bins are available for agricultural sharps. These are then transported to the Drumheller District Regional Landfill by Nihil County operations staff for recycling or disposal. Through the Government of Alberta and Clean Farms, select Nihil County sites are a collection site for pesticide containers. The containers must be clean and rinsed and can either be bagged or loose. The containers must be no larger than 23 liters. Through Clean Farms, a contractor is sent to the sites and the jugs are shredded and removed from the site approximately 2 to 3 times per year. Clean Farms also runs a program for the collection of unwanted commercial agricultural pesticides and old livestock equine medications. This program is run on a 3-year cycle, whereas a collection site is within our area. In the past, the collection site has usually been at a Nihil soil location. Information on these programs can be found on the Clean Farms website, as well as on our own Nihil County website. Nihil County also arranges the recycling of such materials as scrap metal, white metal, wire, tires, car batteries, and propane bottles. These options are offered at select Nihil County transfer sites, as well as our partner sites in Trochu and Acme. Nihil County has also offered a yearly hazardous roundup in May of each year. Being a member of the Drumheller District Solid Waste Association also offers the residents of Nihil County the ability to access the recycling options available at the Drumheller District landfill. Such options include antifreeze, batteries, cardboard, electronics, fire extinguishers, fluorescent bulbs, hard plastics, numbers 1s to 7, household hazardous waste, light bulbs, magazines, newsprint, oil filters, paint, propane tanks, shredded paper, tin cans, tires, used oil, and windshield washer fluid, among some of the things offered. Information on the recycling can also be found on the Drumheller District Solid Waste Management Waste Association website. So I just wanted to kind of go through our sites that we have here in Nihil County one by one and just kind of list what we can take as recycling. So our Three Hills site, just outside of the town of Three Hills, we have 2 transitory bins. This is bagged household garbage only. not really recycling, but that's what's offered. As well, we can take car batteries, we can take paint. As well, this is the location for our collection site for pesticide jugs and twine. And as well, we also take cardboard and newsprint recycling. At our Linden site, we have again the Transtor bins, which isn't recycling exactly, but it is a service offered for bagged household waste only. We also take scrap metal, white metal, wire, tires, car batteries, paint, electronics, the e-waste, which has been expanded to include pretty much anything with a cord, unless it has a light bulb attached to it. As well, we also take propane bottles, cardboard, and newsprint as well there. At our Torrington site, again, Transtor bins are available there for household bagged waste. We also take scrap metal, white metal, wire, tires, car batteries, paint, e-waste, electronics, propane bottles, cardboard, and newsprint. At our carbon site, we don't offer a lot at our carbon site. It is our smallest site. So we have the Transtor bins, plus we have the cardboard recycling. Our news print was taken away from that site just because of the quantity wasn't there to sustain a bin, so they removed the bin on us. Nihil County residents can also access the recycling options available at our partner sites in the town of Trochu and the village of Acme. It's always advised that the ratepayer reference the website or phone the corresponding municipality and acceptable materials and hours of operation. So currently on their websites, the town of Trochu site has Transtor bins. They have tire recycling, batteries, paint, e-waste, electronics, scrap metal, white metal, compost, cardboard, newsprint recycling, and a burn pit. The town of Acme currently has Transtor bins. They also take tree branches, bulk oil/oil filters, cardboard, and newsprint recycling. Although not a form of recycling, a burn pit is available for residents at our Linden site and Torrington sites. The Torrington site also offers a small residential Class 3 landfill. So below is a listing of acceptable materials. Since we're talking about the pending closure of the Three Hills site, I'll kind of go through what they're actually accepting right now. So although Nihil County doesn't accept all the recycling materials that they do, we do offer a wide array of recycling and can cover it in some form or another. It's just not as convenient in one spot, that's all. So some of the acceptable recycling materials at the Three Hills site is electronics. So again, that includes your TVs, computers, that sort of thing. And it has been expanded to pretty much take anything with a cord. They have cardboard, bond paper. They have newsprint, miscellaneous paper like the glossy gift wrap and that sort of thing, construction paper. They take books with hardcovers. When we say we take newsprint and cardboard in our bins, they can't be bonded. So books and stuff like that aren't really acceptable in those because just the way they recycle it after. Phone books, they also take plastics. They take numbers 1s to number 7, just those types of plastics. They take plastic bags, so like your old grocery bags and stuff like that. They also take those types. They also take metals like aluminum cans and other light metals. They don't take like the big scrap metal at that site, although they do take it at their landfill, I believe. But at this site, it's just the aluminum cans and tins and things like that. They do take glass as well, so glass jars and bottles. And they take batteries, all sizes of batteries, and they also take paint. So if council had a desire to increase the recycling services currently being offered, there are some options that could be explored. So including going to curbside recycling with the hamlets, that could coincide with the county's current garbage collection, unsupervised recycling depots within the county, increased options at our current facilities, and amending the current hours and days that our facilities operate with what we currently take. Some potential concerns to expanding our current service levels are increased staffing to supervise these sites, user education, correct sorting of the materials, potential costs to have the new options, potentially losing a market for a specific item, such as glass, and lack of volume generated to make it worthwhile for the recycler. So that kind of ends a bit of my speaking, so I can take any questions if you want.
Does council have any questions for Mr. McKiernan? Yes, Councillor Christie.
I guess the only plastics that we have are like the DEF barrels and ammonium sulfate barrels they won't take back. So they're 45-gallon drums. There's really no place to put them.
Through the reef, Councillor Christie, from what I understand is those larger bins can actually go back to the retailer, is what I was told.
Do you want to tell the retailers or me?
So no, we don't take the larger size, that's just 23 liters and under. So that's the program that's run, yeah.
Councillor Kiever.
I imagine we're having trouble with people going through the old livestock equine medications looking for ivermectin, eh?
Through the reef, I haven't heard of any yet, no. Those bins are actually locked, so we actually have to have something to open that up, but yeah.
Councillor King.
I guess I was part of the push to get this discussion. A number of my ratepayers have talked to me about it's the household stuff, it's the plastics and the glass, and they really are not anxious to put that into their garbage. It's the shredded paper and the things that currently, other than Three Hills, no one is taking those things. And so that was the concern, is that now this material that they've sort of trained themselves to collect and then haul to Three Hills, they no longer have a home for all of that. So the alternative for most of them now is going to be TransStore. And there doesn't seem to be a great amount of happiness about that, but that's where they're going to end up. So,
Through the reef, Councillor King, I understand that for sure, but I know it's not as convenient, but if they were dedicated to recycling that, Drumheller does take that. I know it's a lot further. Maybe the trip then becomes, instead of monthly, maybe becomes a couple months. I'm not too sure, but there is that option for them. I know I just know and I understand it's not as convenient. But.
just a follow-up comment. In my mind, most recycling is driven by convenience more than anything else, and so that's where we'll lose that. And you know, there are some that have really, I guess, trained themselves and the people who live in their residence, and I happen to be one of those who's been trained, but who have taken advantage of the Three Hills site. And it's just unfortunate that we're going to lose that option, that's all.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
Councillor Penner, who's on our Drumheller Solid Waste Committee, couldn't be here due to very small technicality with her electronics today, but she was wanting to mention that maybe there's a way we could bring some uptake into the hamlets with maybe small bins, with multi-purpose bins that have small holds, and we'd love to see if we could have some of those options explored with costs, and I agree with her, so that's why I'm bringing it forward as well. I think this conversation needs to be continued into how can we make recycling more convenient, but yet still pay attention to the costs. So if there are some ideas, is that possible, John, to bring some ideas of ways to do more curbside recycling? Maybe it's just a bin, and pros and cons to those kinds of things, and what things would the Drumheller Solid Waste Group be partnership, and glad to be partnership with bringing those recyclables in, because I also agree with Councillor King. We need to find a way for people who've learned to do that well to continue to do that, and I'd love to see us research some ideas maybe at a committee of the whole meeting.
Through the Reeve, Deputy Reeve McGee, I can definitely look into options for sure. I'm not sure, but maybe Councillor Penner can also, I guess, the Drumheller Land, the Solid Waste Association does have kind of a standalone one inside the town of Drumheller. And I know that just recently they had to revamp that with more security. I think they got cameras up and all that because of illegal dumping and things like that, vandalism. So they did put up new fencing and they put up some cameras and stuff, I believe, to try to curb some of that. So there's pros and cons to having those little sites set up, but I can definitely look into options. Yep.
Councillor Kiever.
I know Councillor Penner has been, really getting into this stuff. But I seen a recent farm paper, some farmer up at Vegreville, I believe it was, has started recycling plastic, and it looks like he doesn't even want it separated out. You know, I mean, you just bring the plastic, and he's making fence posts out of it. He's doing, I think, something like 4,000 fence posts a week out of plastic, so. And I think this has been part of the biggest problem with getting people to want to recycle this plastic, is because you always had to keep it separated, all the different kinds, whereas if this guy is really doing what it sounds like, it would really take off then, I think.
Councillor King.
Since Three Hills has been operating a recycling depot for some length of time, is there a way that we could maybe pick the information that they've developed in terms of cost of operation, the amount of materials that they're actually receiving? Because that might help us in our conversation at a committee of the whole, if we were to talk about, you know, some kind of dedicated recycling site or sites. That might help us in terms of having some information. They have a facility. They must have an idea of what it's costing them and what their returns are, and that might be good information.
To you, what's council's wishes?
Recycling is part of sustainability and good stewardship of our communities, and therefore I'd like to make the motion to have administration bring back more information on possible opportunities for bettering recycling in Nihil County, including costs to have targets at bins at the hamlets, to a committee of the whole meeting.
I will wait for that motion to come up on screen. Sorry, Councillor King.
Yeah, just while the motion's being put together, I just want to comment that I think that we are doing a good job on recycling of the larger items. It's all that small household stuff is where Three Hills has really given our residents an option of it and a place to go to. And so I'm certainly not unhappy with what we have available. And I'm just wondering about how we supplement that. That's more my question. I'm not disappointed in the options that we currently have available. Just wondering if we can supplement more.
Through the reef. Thanks, Councillor King. I know that we do offer pretty much everything that Three Hills does, other than the few, like you said, household things like glass and plastics. So otherwise, they can recycle everything else at our sites.
Okay, we have a motion on screen. Is that the way you would like to see that motion written?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. So I will read it back for those that don't have it on screen. Move that council direct administration to bring back more information on possible opportunities for better recycling, including costs for hamlets to have small bins, to a future committee of the whole meeting. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none, so I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item, 5.1.1, subdivision extension. Welcome, Ms. Hazelton. And anytime you're ready.
Perfect. Good morning, Mr. Reeve, members of council. So I'm just bringing a subdivision extension request for KNE 200148. So it's a subdivision relating to a portion of the northwest of 83323 west of 4. Landowners are given a year from the date of approval in which to meet the conditions of approval. If the conditions are met, the subdivision approving authority is required to endorse the subdivision to allow registration at land titles. There are multiple factors involved with a specific subdivision. Additional environmental studies have been done to ensure the land can be used for the proposed use. The applicant is also considering changing the septic system currently in place. Due to the length of time required and the current season, an extension for the subdivision file is required for the applicant to finalize the conditions set out in the approval on October 22nd, 2020. A typical extension is granted for 1 year. In this case, the extension would be granted for another year until October 24th, 2022. Section 657.46 of the MGA permits council to extend the 1-year approval period whether or not that period has expired. There are no limits set in the Municipal Government Act for either the number of extensions or the length of time an extension can be granted. Landowners or their agents may make requests for an extension of the timeframes from council. Requests for extensions to subdivision approvals can only be issued by council of the approving authority, and that's what we've just got before you today.
Councillor King.
I'm going to make the motion that we do grant the 1-year extension to KNE 200148 until October 24th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to grant a 1-year extension to KNE 200148. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Boy, that wasn't painful at all. Thanks, Barb. Okay, our next agenda item, 5.4.1, Community Futures. Welcome, Ms. Buchanan. And anytime you're ready.
Good morning, Raven Council. So I am in front of you today, again, presenting a program we're working on collaboratively with Community Futures Wildrose. So they've had the opportunity recently to participate in the Digital Main Street program. So a little bit of a background on the program. Essentially what that is it's something that was started in Ontario as a provincial pilot project where Digital Main Street, the organization, brings in student interns to assist businesses in developing an online presence. So it can be as simple as getting people online with Google. It can be as complicated as helping somebody set up their e-commerce site on their website. So essentially, it's basically a support tool to help businesses get online and get visible. Of course, COVID, we've realized, again, the importance of people having a digital presence, especially when, online shopping, things like that have become a priority. So Community Futures has been working on getting this program into our region for, probably almost a year now, but on our own, it just wasn't possible. We just didn't have the numbers to support the program and to get Digital Main Streets present. That being said, the business link, so the provincially run business link that does business supports is now able to offer this program. In order to make that happen, they want regional partners to stand up and help implement it. There's some really complicated numbers that have to follow to determine if your region has enough people in it in order to have the program in your region. Kneehill County independently hasn't reached those numbers, nor do I believe in our entire Community Futures Wildrose, maybe Chestermere was the only one that could actually do the program on their own. So Community Future said we can lead it and we can do it as a regional project. So that's just your little bit of background on Digital Main Street. So what we're in front of you today is we're asking for a letter of support and council support to throw our name in the hat to help Community Futures along with this project to get it up and running. So this program is open to home-based businesses or commercial small businesses registered in Alberta with less than 50 employees. Nonprofits, charitable trusts, and franchises are not considered eligible under this program. However, Community Futures does have some other programs and services that can support them. The Digital Service Squad, which is specifically what Community Futures is going to be focusing on, again, that's those interns to help you really, you might have an online website, but you need to put a little bit more work into it. That's what the Digital Service Squad is going to provide. This program will include training and advisory support towards digital strategy development, Google My Business Assistant, social media posts, pictures, and more. And it'll be available to local businesses starting this fall. So working as a region, Community Futures is an eligible business support provider. Like I said, it's based on the mathematical equation that was provided by BusinessLink to be involved in this program. Currently, as I said, it rolled out in Ontario. It's now in New Brunswick, but it's fairly recent to Alberta. So having it now with BusinessLink, I think we're going to see it a lot more standard through Alberta. In order to make application to participate in this program, Community Futures is requesting a letter of support, in-kind contribution, as well as a financial contribution. They will be able to receive funding from BusinessLink to implement this program. I don't have the final numbers of what it was going to cost. Down at the bottom there, it'll be just under $150,000 for them to do this to the region, with the assumption that they'll be able to support about 447 businesses. So what they have done is they've done an estimate for each municipality to identify what that financial contribution would look like. And it's also based on what is required to get the in-kind contribution from BusinessLink. For Kneehill County, they're hoping that they could support approximately 30 businesses, and they're asking us for a financial request of $1,400. So with my operating budget, we have a budget line that we use for basically play-to-pay projects for Community Futures and for Central Alberta Access Prosperity. So we do have this amount available to use in this project for the Community Futures support. And I think that's all the pertinent details. The letter of support indicates that in order, if they do obtain the funding from the program, we have to sign a memorandum of understanding to participate. And as always, we don't pay the funds until we find out if they're proceeding in the project or not. So questions, comments?
Councillor Christie.
Just a comment that the project would make our small business way more visible on the internet, which is extremely important with COVID, where the at-home shopping is really important and needs to be supported in our small businesses for sure.
Are there any other questions or comments from council to Ms. Buchanan? It's council's wishes. Deputy Reeve McGee.
I think this is one of the things that we have set out to do quite from the very beginning, is to expand how business can be a part of our contribution to our community, and to support that has been very important to this council. So I'm quite comfortable making the motion that we partner with Community Futures Wild Rose to implement the digital economy program with a financial contribution of $1,400, as well as a letter of support.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us as printed in our package. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve and council.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Good luck. Okay, our next agenda item, 6.1, process change. Welcome, Mr. McKinnon. And anytime you are ready.
Good morning, Reeve and Council. The RFD before you today is looking for approval to begin signing checks electronically. Currently, all checks for the municipality are signed manually. So a bit of background, a process review was undertaken regarding accounts payable. There was a multi-divisional team put together. They came up with around 25 recommendations. 5 of those recommendations were implemented immediately. The rest are subject to further changes that will be implemented over the next year or so. One of the items that came up during the review was the rationale for signing checks manually. Currently, we sign approximately 150 checks weekly. Manually, most of the checks, approximately 50%, are under $500. And checks that are large in amounts are signed off by both the Reeve and Deputy Reeve or CAO, as the case may be. In addition to doing the process review internally, we did what I call a peer review, where we hired an outside external firm to validate some of the processes and changes we are wishing to make. That firm has confirmed that these changes are all good best practices and would result in efficiencies for the municipality. So based on that, we're looking to amend our current practice of signing checks electronically by having staff, which they currently do, is approve the edit list. So when the checks are presented to administration, I'll give you a hypothetical example, not really hypothetical, real example. A lot of the checks are being signed off, the invoices are being signed off by myself. The invoices come back to me, they're signed off by a manager, they're signed off by a director potentially. They come back to me, I then sign the checks after signing the invoices. There's a lot of redundancies that we have in our process. So we're looking to streamline our process and meet all the required audit criteria. So based on that, we're recommending that the manual check signing process be replaced by electronic signatures, and that in replacing that the edit list that are included in each of the check batches be authorized and signed off by the appropriate signing authority. So that's in a nutshell. Again, there is no direct financial implications of implementing this, but it will result in significant improvements to cycle times and allow us to reallocate existing staff time. Be pleased to answer any questions council may have.
Does council have any questions for Mr. McKinnon? Looks like you're off the hook there, Bill. Okay, Deputy Reeve McGee.
I just wanted to compliment you on, again, as you have been here for a while, you have found several ways to help us be streamlining and be more efficient with our time and our dollars, and I really appreciate this as also another indication that you work hard to get things better. Therefore, I move that we have electronic signatures permitted with the requirement to sign off the payment editing list.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us that electronic signatures be permitted with the requirement to sign off the payment edit listing. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Christie.
I guess the only comment I'd make is the quicker that we deal with accounts receivable, the better we're viewed by suppliers and that kind of stuff. Municipal government has a reputation of being slow getting payments done, and that costs on bids and stuff like that. So I think that anything we can do to streamline this is really important.
Is there any other discussion to the motion? I do not see any. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, you were on a time lag there, Councillor Hugo. You are in favor?
Yes, I was.
Okay, sorry, that's just your connection is kind of iffy. Okay, so then that motion was carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Good luck with all that spare time you're going to have, Mr. McKinnon. Okay, our next agenda item, 8.1, Nihil Regional FCSS budget. And who is taking this one? Mr. Hogan?
So through you, Mr. Reeve, to council. The, what's before you is the same process that we go through every year, where the regional FCSS board looks at its finances, what it has coming in for grants, and looks at its budget. And then the board puts together a proposed budget to forward to its members. And as council is aware, the FCSS funding is a combination of provincial funding and municipal funding. So in order to gain the provincial funding, the municipalities are required to put in a minimum threshold of funding. And that's, again, what the budget here is built. The one thing that, that staff have noted about the overall budget itself, we don't have really any comments there. The one comment we would point out is, as council is aware, the province has changed the way that it calculates populations. So as opposed to going on the previous census number, which is what they previously did, then right now they're using a formula to estimate population rather than going on the census number. And as you can see here, the estimated population for the county is 5,529, which is a province saying that in the last few years the county has gained 528 people, or roughly a 10% population growth. I have no data to support or refute that, but I would question a 10% growth rate within the county. We've not had the opportunity to go through and assess what that broader impact would be. If that is the county's population number going forward, that means that anything that we pay into on a per capita basis is going to increase. Anything that we get funding on a per capita basis is also going to increase. But it's a significant jump. And again, we're curious to see what the province's formula in putting that number together is, because it does seem high. That being said, that's not a reflection of the FCSS budget itself. That's just a side topic to it. But again, the item that's before you is for council to approve the Nihil Regional Family and Community Support Services budget and allocations. And once that's done, then as we go forward with preparing the county's budgets, we would include that number in it.
Thanks, Mr. Hogan. I got a question for you. You've stated that we have no data to support that number. Does the province have any data to support that number?
This would be the question that through Mr. Reeve to go back to. There has been correspondence in the past around how that formula would be derived, and that's what we need to revisit to start from.
And short of doing a census, we're kind of hooped.
That the province has put out there, short version to the answer, that is yes. The province has put out there that that's the methodology that they'll be using going forward.
Are there any other questions from council for Mr. Hogan? I mean, a 2.7% increase in the requisition isn't that tough to handle. But when you do a 10% increase in population, it gets a little harder to handle. Especially with no data. Councillor Christie.
With the census that was done this year, how long before we get information back from it? Like, we're working on 2018 numbers versus one that was just done this year.
Well, that kind of answers your question. 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, in the past, there hasn't been quite that delay, but there has been, there is definitely a lag.
What's council's wishes? Councillor King.
I agree with the concern about the numbers, and sure it'd be nice to have more solid numbers. However, I'm very much supportive, as you well know, of the FCSS program and what they're doing in our communities. So I will make the motion that council approve the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services 2022 budget and allocations as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve the budget and the allocations as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? Deputy Reeve McGee.
I just wanted to reiterate the importance of this program, and they've dealt with quite a budget cut prior years. So this would be an example where maybe this number is doing our community a favor in the long run, because we need to have the best support possible for FCSS. And so I think we're going to take this, I'd like to take this as a win.
Is there any other discussion to the motion? Well, I see none. Well, okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Our next agenda item, 8.2, the capital mailing. Welcome, Ms. Anderson. And anytime you are ready.
Good morning, Reeve Council. I have for you today a capital mailing RFD. In April of 2020, the Three Hills Capital changed the way their weekly newspaper is delivered due to an increase in Canada Post mailing rates. It is now delivered for free to every resident living within Nihil County. As we have many residents that live outside the county's borders, since the change in April, we have been mailing a capital each week to those residents who request the service. In February of 2021, Council directed administration to continue mailing the capital out on a cost recovery basis. So the process to continue mailing the capital while recouping the cost will be quite involved. As Canada Post rates are subject to change, billing would have to be frequently done to ensure that we're not over or undercharging. And since we get the capital for free, we'd have to charge each resident the exact amount of postage to ensure we're not making a profit off a publication that isn't ours. Mailing the capital takes a considerable amount of work and must be done every week, which has proven problematic at times. As the issue lies in trying to keep our residents informed, administration is recommending that instead of mailing the capital each week, starting in 2022, we offer residents a weekly or bi-weekly e-news bulletin emailed to their address instead, which would cover all county information that would have been in the paper, as well as any other announcements and advertisements happening at that time. A link to the digital version of the capital would also be included in the e-bulletin. And this is a service that we could offer to all of our residents to help keep them informed. I should note that free paper copies of the capital are still available for residents at numerous locations in Three Hills for those with poor internet connection. I believe it's at Circle K, Winks, whichever that one is, and I think Get and Go as well, and maybe Peter's Pharmacy. So currently the cost to mail the capital is approximately $60 a week or $3,000 a year. To distribute the e-bulletin, we would use the same program we use for staff newsletters, with a slight upgrade to increase the contacts we're allowed and allow more staff users. This would increase the price $20 to $40 per month, or $240 to $480 per year. So council options: discontinue the capital mailing and move to an e-news bulletin, or direct administration to research other alternatives. And I do have just a little example, if we could pull it up, of what it looks like in email form. Click happy. There you are. So, yeah. So it starts out with a greeting. We can put their name right in there to make it a little bit more personal. And then as you scroll down, all of these kind of graphics that may be a little bit small, you can click on them and they'll show you the actual document. In theory. Should work. Okay, it's all right. technology, yeah, it should. Okay, well, it does work, I promise. But then if you scroll down, we also include, there's a link, straight video of the last council meeting, and then the council notes are also included. Basically, anything pertinent, anything happening, and we're not limited like we are in the Capitol with the full page. We can send as much as we want out. Fire Prevention Week, and then, yeah, so here's the live stream link. And depending on the timing, so we could either send it out with the council agenda prior to the council meeting on the Friday beforehand, if you want to just keep scrolling. So these, again, will take you right to the website for more information. And then at the very bottom, I also included a link to the Capitol so that they can access it that way. Which works in theory. I don't know why.
Well, I think it's good to have all that information being presented to our residents. Hopefully they take advantage of it. Are there any questions from council for Ms. Anderson? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment, Small Business Week's gonna get promoted in the next edition
Of the newsletter?
of the, yeah. Thank you.
You bet. I'll make a note.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
I have a few concerns, I have a large portion of people who contact me who say, if it's on the computer, it's not gonna happen for them, it just doesn't work, which is what we addressed back when we had asked you to do the mailing project. I also, if I remember the survey correctly, the Capitol was one of the top ways people hear about what's happening with Nihil County. And so I'm just a little bit concerned if we went 100% electronic, that we are not going to be having the same regard for how well we have people informed as we do now. Having said that, I don't have a suggestion.
Sorry, through the Reeve, Deputy Reeve McGee, I do understand that, and it's very unfortunate that they had to change the way it was mailed. I was just thinking that this might be a good compromise for those that aren't comfortable maybe going on social media or the website themselves. Most everybody has an email address now. So this might present a good compromise between getting the actual Capitol and having to go on our social media where most of the information is available.
Councillor King.
So the people that we are currently mailing the Capitol to are non-resident ratepayers, correct?
Through the Reeve, Councillor King, they just live outside of the county's borders. So they may own land in the county, or their mailing address might be outside the county. Like there are some that live in the county, but they get their mail in Olds. Yes, so the Capitol isn't delivered there.
So this e-news bulletin would go just to those individuals or to all ratepayers?
Through the Reeve, Councillor King, I would offer it first to those that have signed up for this service, and once that was going, I would offer it to all of our residents, because really can't inform them too much.
And just another follow-up, and so then the regular delivery of the Capitol to those who have mailboxes within Nihil County would continue?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Christie.
So my understanding is this would be an email that would just pop up. You're not going looking for that site. It'd show up as an email every couple of weeks. So then you're not looking for it. All of a sudden it'd be an email that you could read or follow through. For me, that would work, but I know I've got several ratepayers on the north side of the county that have Innisfail addresses that are grumpy because they don't get the Capitol. And I didn't realize before that if they put their name down, they would get mailed to them at a cost. But So that's the only comment I've had, is that our mailbox is outside the county, we're ratepayers, and we don't get the capital. So I mean, that's still a concern, but I appreciate the availability that if it comes up as an email, at least you have an opportunity to get to it really quickly, not go searching for it on the web. So I appreciate that.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
Have you forewarned anyone to get their feedback of the people who you have been currently mailing, or we're just waiting till we make a decision here? Good, thanks.
Councillor King.
I was just going to ask the question, how many people do we currently have taking advantage of the mail out at this point in time?
Through the Reeve, Councillor King, we have about 100 residents.
Okay, so just a follow-up question. If we were to say to that 100, which might become 100 plus or whatever, that we were going to charge X number of dollars, and I know you talk about not making a profit on a publication, but a reasonable cost for us to mail to those individuals, and just say, you know, you're going to pay $15 a year, whatever that number happens to be, $30 a year, whatever it is. Is there a problem with us doing that? I guess the time factor is a big part of what you're talking about as well, right?
Yes, through the Reeve, it is, because it's every single week, and it takes most of a morning. So it's just that it's the constant mailing of the newspapers that has kind of proved problematic at times as well.
Councillor King.
Have we had any conversation with the individuals who are currently having the paper mailed to them in terms of saying, if we were to do this, is that a suitable alternative, or would they still really want to have that paper come into them?
Through the Reeve, yeah. I haven't had that conversation with them yet. We were just kind of researching options before we went any further. But I mean, originally, we were mailing them the capital as kind of a transition to kind of get them used to the digital version, so.
I guess I have a question for you, Christine. Is there an opportunity for those people to get a hold of the publisher and have the publisher mail those copies out, like through a subscription?
Reeve, I can definitely contact them and see. I know in the past that they haven't been doing that just because we were offering this service, but that's something we can definitely talk with them about.
Well, they're in the business of mailing stuff, so.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wonder if that wouldn't be a compromise that would work. But. Councillor King.
So I'm going to suggest maybe that we table this item and maybe ask administration to do a little bit of research with the Three Hills Capital in terms of whether they would be willing to mail out, and then maybe engage somewhat with some of the people who are getting our current mail out to see if the alternative of an e-news bulletin, if that would be suitable. I feel right now that I don't have enough information to make this decision. So
Okay.
That's my suggestion. We just table and ask administration to come back with additional information.
Okay, if there's a tabling motion, there's no discussion on a tabling motion. So when would you like to see this come back, Councillor King?
Would a month be enough?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So maybe to the first meeting in November?
Okay. All right, I will wait for that tabling motion to come up on screen. Okay, is that the way you would like to see the tabling motion presented?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, I will read it out. Move that council table the capital mailing discussion and have administration bring back further information to the first council meeting in November. There is no discussion to a tabling motion, so I will go to the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you, council.
Comment? You understand, Christine, do you need anything more from us to be able to come back with what we're looking for?
Through the Reeve, no, you've given me good direction. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. Okay, our next, does anyone want a break? Okay, we will go recess, and then we will come back. Alrighty, I will bring the meeting back to order. Our next agenda item is Human Resources Policy 19-2. Welcome, Ms. Kasha, and anytime you are ready.
Good morning, Reven Council. Mike is going to take this one, and I'm just going to be a support.
Okay, we'll punt it off to Mr. Hogan.
I thought I was almost off the hook there for a second.
He supports us, so now I get to support him.
Alrighty, sounds good. Anytime you're ready then, Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, to council. As council is aware, there's been discussions around different parts of the human resources policy for several months now, in terms of directions, ideas, stuff like that. Most of those have happened have been draft policy discussions or going through legalities and things like that. Now it is before you for the adoption of a new policy. And as has been talked about, is the proposed policy marks a philosophical shift from the old one. So I should say the old one. Right now it's the current one. If this motion goes through, it will become the old one. But the current policy is very prescriptive and is very detailed in its intent, down into what between council and administration, what we've referred to as the weeds in a number of areas. And so the current policy, the proposed policy that's before you is very much elevated to more of a governance level. And I pause a little bit at the governance level because there is a bit of the middle ground in here where we've said the proposed policy really outlines broad governance statements or broad policy frameworks. And so there are some policy statements in there that are a bit prescriptive. And really what they're saying is these are the borders of the program. You guys work on the details. And so as council, you're saying that this is some of the program that's going to exist. These are some of the parameters of it or some of the boundaries of it. The details of its day-to-day administration we're leaving to you guys. And so there's a combination of both of those in there. And so as you'll note, the policy has been narrowed up quite a bit on that front. And the other element that we've tied into that is building in that flexibility or that efficiency. And as council knows, over the course of your term here, that has been a focus, is trying to find some of those efficiencies, either through changing our processes or making our processes less rigid. You just saw one earlier this meeting around the electronic check signing is another example. So many elements were identified as problematic or too rigid to facilitate efficient operations and change when needed. As an example, when hours of work are very rigidly defined, the ability to amend work hours in response to changes, service level demands, etc., becomes cumbersome and a long process. And when we do this, having council's policy is one thing. We're also bound by employment standards and employment legislation. And so when we attempt to make these changes or we attempt to respond to things, we already have one set of rules and regulations that are impacting those changes. And the further we go into on the policy side, then it keeps adding some of the complexities or the burdens to that. So as I've said, the current policy contains a great deal of information and detail. It's felt that some of that would be better handled outside the policy realm, and more efficiently through administrative directions under myself and the senior leadership team. And so when we look at a number of things in the policy, is we asked ourselves, where does an item, when we're dealing with, say, exit interviews or when we're dealing with dress code or things like that, are those things that council wants to spend its governance time in this meeting debating, or is that something that council is good to saying, no, we have governance issues to resolve. Administration, you can handle, the process in dealing with exit interviews. You can handle those types of things, particularly given that council doesn't see the exit interviews anyway. So there are elements like that we said these are largely administrative day-to-day functions in administering human resources. We can likely take them out of a governance level policy. And so again, that refers back to that philosophical shift. Some of the items that were in there as we were looking through the policy is we also identified that there were a few things that exist in the current policy that are important enough or that are robust enough or required to possibly exist as their own standalone policies. And so when we talk about things, when we looked at our current section around workplace violence and sexual harassment, is we looked at that and said, you know, there's other elements that we should tie in there. As part of the review, there was identified items that we probably need to tie into that. And we said that might actually lend itself and work better as a standalone policy regarding workplace violence and harassment, rather than burying it in the human resource policy. So if you approve this, council can anticipate that there will be other standalone policies related to human resources coming. But it is, again, for some of those, we felt that they would do best as standalone policies, just given the size, the nature, and the like. So as the next portion that we went in here is we looked for cost savings relative to human resource programs and ways of reducing future financial liabilities to the county. And so some of the ways that this policy outlines or that we would look at is a large reduction in the ability to bank sick time. We did want to strike a balance there, given what we've seen in COVID and what we anticipate will be a new societal outlook on the way that sickness or illness in the workplace is treated. So we felt that it was important to maintain some of that program, but felt that it could be greatly reduced, and that's what's proposed here. We've also looked at some of the other elements of this. So in the current policy, the CAO is currently able to award bonuses to staff. This hasn't actually been utilized in many, many years. But again, it was still sitting in policy, and we said we probably don't need that. Additionally, our remuneration program designates work taking place on Saturday and Sunday as automatically deemed overtime. So for a number of our staff right now, is if you work on a Saturday or Sunday, you are automatically receiving overtime for that. The new policy eliminates that. So in that case, now, that being said, if you work on those days, it likely will be overtime, particularly if if you've worked the previous week, the weekdays to that, then you're going to meet the hourly threshold, it's going to be overtime. But it doesn't automatically become overtime is the key. So in likelihood it will be, but there are times when it won't be. The other thing is looking at some of the other future liabilities we have, or some of the money that's going out. We have a yearly payout that's related to sick time. Not all of staff receive this. This is an item that's already been grandfathered and is on its way out. But the current policy does expedite that process and indicate that that program would end. So again, it's one more payment that we wouldn't be making. So there's a few of those that tie in there. Other parts of the policy, we've talked about ones that may be standalone. We've talked about ones that may be better off that may be more efficient, is what I mean by better off if they're left administratively. There are some that we looked at, like leaves of absence. The current policy outlines a lot of leaves of absence. When we went through those, all of them except for one are already covered under employment standards. And so again, we looked at that saying, do we need to replicate that in our own policy if we're exactly following employment standards? And so what we would look at doing is saying, no, we can still offer those. They'll just be done, again, as per employment standards, which of course is provincial legislation. And to that end, we don't, given that it exists as provincial legislation, we can't ignore that or go lower than that anyway. So as we went through there, we looked at those things. We looked at the ability for our supervisors and managers to manage HR, to give them some flexibility, to give them some ability to adapt to change in a more efficient manner. And to the last point to the RFD is the proposed policy clarifies and strengthens some current abilities of the county. And so right now we do have the ability to manage overtime, to manage vacation time. And you know, in the past, the county has done well on this on some fronts and not well on other fronts. And so again, when I talk about that future financial liability, if we're not managing vacation time effectively, it can build and build and build. And of course, when people retire, they leave the employment, that's money that then gets paid out. And so this policy does take some effort to strengthen, or strengthen might not be quite the right word, but to clarify at the very least that the county has a greater ability to manage that, to ensure that we're not letting that scenario happen where vacation time builds and builds and builds, as not only does that present a financial liability in the future, it also promotes burnout and issues like that, which we don't want to see either. All of those are not, it's not a healthy scenario for our staff, and it's not an effective scenario for service delivery. And so again, the current policy does that. The last point in the policy itself, as we go through, is council's authorization for the CAO, for myself, to implement a transition plan. And so in this policy is a little bit different from some of the other ones that council deals with, in terms of if you adopt the policy here today, the existing one is rescinded, this one becomes in place. There are still legal requirements that we will have to meet in terms of notice provision and things of this nature that we'll need to put in place to transition from the current policy to the new one. And so as part of this, what you're doing is you're giving me the authority to put those transitions and those transition plans in place.
Thanks, Mike. Does council have any questions for Mr. Hogan or Ms. Kasha? Deputy Reeve McGee.
I was curious about, under holidays, 12.1, we list the 12 of those there. We have the new one, Truth and Reconciliation Day. Do we want to also add that to that list, or are you figuring 12.2 covers it?
We, through you, Mr. Reeve, to Deputy Reeve McGee, we did look at that. Right now, it is covered under 12.2. So if that does become a permanent holiday, which my understanding is that it's going to be, then it still would be covered under 12.2.
Are there any other questions from council? Councillor King.
I had a question regarding Section 6, the whistleblower portion. Is there any way for someone to bring something forward in a way that allows them to remain completely anonymous? Like currently, the complaints would come initially to the chief administrative officer, and if they're regarding that individual, they would go to the human resources coordinator and then be forwarded to the REAP. There is, the way I read this, there is no way for someone to bring something forward and maintain sort of anonymity, and I'm just wondering, is there a way that that could happen?
Do you want to? The short answer is no, and there's some reasons for that. But
Through the Reeve, the reason that we can't do that is because when we go through the investigation process, we need to have all of the information. So we would always maintain as much confidentiality as we can. But in order to complete the investigation, we would need to be able to interview any pertinent parties.
Are there any other questions from council to the presenters? What are council's wishes? Okay, that's loud and clear. Councillor King.
This, I guess, is another question. So as you are given the ability to create these other areas of policy or guidelines as the administrative officer, are you going to keep council aware of what those policies are? Not that we'll be voting on them necessarily or approving them, but just so that we have an awareness of what all's contained within those policies?
through Mr. Reeve, this administrative directive, we can keep council aware, but it would be at a very high level. So part of these would be, and what I mean by that is if we're bringing them to you, then basically we're making them policy It puts you guys in a position where saying, oh, we're not going to get involved in this, or we're not going to approve this, but I'd sure like it if this was changed. So really, you've started approving and looking at it. But in terms of, are they getting it done? What are the broad processes and stuff like that? Then yes, we can.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Anyone care to make a motion? Councillor King.
Okay, I'm going to make the motion then that council adopt the Human Resources Policy 19.2 as it has been presented.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion that council adopt the Human Resource Policy 19.2 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? Yes, Deputy Reeve McGee.
I guess actually it's another question. Could you review to me how this policy, when will it be reviewed, and would it be reviewed by council at any point? Just be sure I'm clear about it.
So through Mr. Reeve to Deputy Reeve McGee. So this policy, what we've done, and Carolyn, I believe we did this 2 years ago, is we established a policy review structure, or I shouldn't say a structure, a schedule. And so the idea going forward from that is that every council policy, which this would be reviewed by council at least once per term. And so that's, if we're following that structure, then this would at some point in the next term of council, likely given that we're doing it today near the end, would be back in front of council if we met that schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, we're running a little bit late, but at 10 o'clock, we have a delegation down at Trochu for a photo opportunity for the Trochu Senior Supportive Living Project. So I will recess the meeting so that we can make that happen. Who is in charge of? Okay, so where are we doing this? Outside where it's fresh? Okay. I don't care what kind of lettuce you eat. It's either crisp or fresh. Okay, well, Christine's here. Where would you like to do it, Christine? Our next agenda item, council and committee reports, Police Advisory Committee. It's been pre-circulated. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment that I like to see the RCMP are going out after midnight. That should help a little.
It's dark. Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'd like to move that we receive the council and committee reports as presented.
All righty, we have a motion to receive council and committee reports as presented for information. Okay, call question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Next agenda item, council follow-up action list. Any questions, concerns there? Councillor King.
Just a question on the motion related to the agricultural road ban exemption side of things. And just wondering, are we hoping to have something in place for next spring, hopefully? And where are we at with that?
Through you, Mr. Reeve, so I think that would be the intent. It's not something that I've yet talked about with our new Director of Infrastructure. So once when that position was vacant, that became an item that I was waiting until other Mike or Mike C. We got a lot of Mikes now, so we're still figuring that part out. But until Mike was on board to have a conversation with him, but I've not yet done that. So
It's just one of the topics that has come up in the process of campaigning. Just there are a number of people who are on that same situation as the producer that initiated the whole conversation, so.
no, and it would be our intent to look at that preceding the next season.
Is there anything else on the council follow-up action list? Councillor Christie.
The gravel blitz, how much gravel's left? There's still quite a bit.
There's still a large amount, through you, Mr. Reeve, to Councillor Christie, there's a large amount of that gravel left. I don't have the exact tonnage off the top of my head. We didn't get much of a take-up on it in the second round. So we are exploring some other options as to what to do with that gravel. And at the same token, we have been approached by one of our urban municipalities who is looking at doing some road work within their municipality and might have interest in a portion of that too. So the short answer is in the gravel blitz, there wasn't great pickup on there. There may be other options that we can do, and we're still exploring those.
Councillor Hugo.
Just a quick question on the pavement on what we call the Hasty Highway. I noticed the delineators all have an orange reflector on them with Alberta Transportation regulations going on to the 2027 highway and the 587. Should they not be a white reflector on top of the delineators, or why did we decide to put yellow reflectors on the delineators?
Through Mr. Reeve to Councillor Hugo, I don't know that information off the top of my head. I would need to look to see what we actually put out there and then I was going to say discover. I would need to look at what we actually put out there and then to weigh that against the standards and to pose a question as to the reasons why we put out there is what's out there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions to deal with committee, council and committee reports? Councilor Christie.
If not, I'll make a motion to accept the follow-up action list as presented for information.
All righty, we have a motion to accept the councilor follow-up action list. Oh, yeah, right, we already did that. Okay. For information as presented. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, that brings us to the end of our regular council meeting. Our next part is in closed session. It is third-party business, section 16 and 25 of FOIP. Would someone like to put us in closed session? Yes, Councillor King.
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made to put us in closed session. All those in favor? And